Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex. And with all of the new ways to obtain CTPs, of course, from things like GBR, from things like the Cosmic Core event going on right now, where you can pull some CTPs by chance, and from, of course, the now pretty famous 28-day login event where you get a CTP chest at the end, I'm sure a lot of you are now left with additional CTPs, whether they are some of the older, less popular ones like Transcendence or Patience, or some of the newer, more bizarre ones like Judgment, Greed, or Insight, and you're not sure who to put them on. And sure, I can go and update the CTP guide, an obelisk guide, yada yada yada, but rather than do that, I want to give you a new type of content, a new type of segment. So I'm just basically going to call this my top 5. This is the top 5 of the top 5 of the top 5 for the CTPs. CTP's got 3 letters, top 5's got, well, top's got 3 letters. Anyways, 5 is a number, not letters, but there's 4 letters in the number 5. So 3, 4, 5, and I've just given you the clue about the next update. So, as the Netmarble CEO, it is my duty to tell you, if you are going out there gambling your crystals, you have to know what to do with them when you pull some of these bad boys. So we're going to go through all these CTPs now. Apologies for the rest of the video if this tempts you, but I'm going to stay on this page because it allows me to just easily do this, and then I can talk about it while I show you the 5 characters that I recommend most for this. Now, you are going to see a lot of repeat characters on the list, because as it turns out in Marvel Future Fight, most of the characters suck. The devs don't know or don't want to rebalance other characters, so yeah, you're gonna see names repeated a lot. That's just basically the way things are, but as always, this is just my opinion, these are just my thoughts. You can definitely feel free to disagree with me, and you can definitely feel free to make your own lists. And share them with me, share them with everybody else. Awesome. Okay, so we're not going to go through all the sexy ones first, because of course I know that's what you want, and I need to get that watch time up. I need you guys to be watching the video for a long time, because then YouTube is like, hey, people like this video and they want to watch it for a long time. Let's go recommend it to other people. And then we get more subscribers, and then we get more fans, and then that's just the way the world works. And then I become the king of Micronesia. So, first things first, not first things first, but first is the one I chose, Transcendence. Here are my top 5 picks for the CTP of Transcendence. We've got Pimptron number 1, Moon Girl number 2, Kid Kaiju number 3, Crescent number 4, and I make that sound, it's kind of like an asterisk, and then number 5 would be Squirrel Girl. Now let me just explain very quickly the difference for me between Transcendence and Patience. Transcendence CTPs, both of these are not very good, but Transcendence CTPs are primarily for characters that have summons, have clones, don't deal a ton of damage, so they're not going to be blowing your socks off anyways, so they don't really deserve a regular damage proc, but they can take care of themselves, i.e. they're not going to die in 1 or 2 hits. If they're not a very squishy summoner, then I will give them a CTP of Transcendence. So that is the criteria. CTP of Transcendence and CTP of Patience are almost exactly the same, except the ignore dodge on Patience is traded for dodge. The dodge, in my opinion, is what makes this for squishy characters, the eye, and what makes this one for the not squishy characters. Now, the reason why I went for Crescent is because she can be made tier 3. I believe once she's made tier 3, if you tier 3 her, she is much stronger and she deserves a regular damage proc or another type of CTP altogether. So consider that. If you're never going to tier 3 Crescent, Transcendence is fine for Shadowland and as a leadership. If you are going to tier 3 Crescent for any reason, then maybe don't, because then in the future you'll have to take off that CTP for 600 crystals. That's just the way that it goes. The other characters on there, Pimptron, Moon Girl, Kid Kaiju, Squirrel Girl, they have iframes, they have invincibility, immunity, they have ways of keeping themselves safe. Next up, we've got the CTP of Patience, the only other CTP that we can't directly gamble for that you get via boost points. Here are my top 5 picks for the CTP of Patience. This is for the squishy summoner builds. We've got Loki number 1, Nightcrawler number 2, Clea number 3, Wave number 4, and Super Giant. Yes, Super Giant number 5. Now, this is basically just a list of characters who they have ways of defending themselves, and actually Nightcrawler probably doesn't need the dodge as much because he has so many iframes, but all of these characters are fairly squishy. They have very little in the way of any kinds of defense. They have like a guard hit, and that's it. They don't have invincibility, they don't have immunity, they're just very, very squishy characters, so you want that dodge, but then you want to boost their attack to boost their clones. So that covers the 2 free CTPs. Now we're going to go over into the ones that you can gamble for and the more interesting ones. So we're going to start it off with Regeneration. This is a PvP centered CTP. Here are my top 5 picks. We've got Thanos number 1, Apocalypse number 2, Silver Surfer number 3, Jean Grey number 4, and newly minted Doctor Strange number 5. Thanos is a really easy number 1. He's basically the tankiest PvP character in the game, so you only make the tankiest character more tanky. That's obviously how it goes. You want to give them more armor, more HP, more healing. Huge buff for him. Sort of the same thing goes for Apocalypse. Apocalypse is kind of like your mini Thanos. He just doesn't have as many advantages as Thanos because he doesn't have, decreased damage from superheroes via a uniform bonus, and he also isn't a universal type, so he does have a massive disadvantage against blast types. And as you know, blast types are the second most popular PvP type in Marvel Future Fight. Silver Surfer number 3 because he's just very good, and he revives, so characters that revive can take advantage of regen at least twice minimum. So that's always really good, and he's got self-healing, so if you build up his recovery rate, you're kind of bouncing that bonus off twice. Jean Grey, sort of same thing. The only reason why Jean Grey isn't above Silver Surfer, although she's better than Silver Surfer for PvP and better than Apocalypse, is because Jean Grey doesn't need the regen. That's how crazy strong she is. She doesn't need this one. That's why she's not higher on the list. It's not necessarily, who is the best with the CTP. That sort of matters and factors into it too, but it's also whether the character even needs it in the first place. Need and also power level are sort of going hand in hand. And then Doctor Strange number 5, he is definitely making a comeback for PvP. As more combat types rise, he will rise to the occasion. As more ignore iframe and iframe interruption, that's ignore iframe. Anyways, as more iframe ignore and counterattack skills pop up, a la Captain Marvel, Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange's value will go up. And turns out Doctor Strange has a lot of HP for a blast type tier 3, so he gets a lot of value from the CTP of Regeneration. Moving on to the next CTP, we've got Energy. This is a classic CTP. This is mostly attack, but there's a little bit of utility there in the ignore dodge, so some characters can take advantage of it for some slight PvP action. But of course, the number 1 character for CTP of Energy, I don't even have to explain why, Sharon frickin' Rogers. Number 2, Cable. Number 3, Deadpool. Number 4, Winter Soldier. And finally, rounding out the list is Quicksilver. This CTP is for characters that want to smash World Boss, Shadowland, Alliance Battle Extreme. They just want to do as much damage as fast as possible. This is also for characters who have tons of hits. So if you can rack up 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hits with a 2 or 3 skill combo, this is the CTP for you. It's the old jackhammer. It's the jackhammer CTP. Anyways, moving on to the next one, we've got Destruction, the original hybrid CTP. This is half PvP, half PvE. This CTP is perfect for characters that you want to use in PvP and are A, lacking a punch, so they just don't have enough damage, and B, lacking penetration, a punch with a little bit through the door, through the wall. So, rounding out the top 5 for the CTP of Destruction, my top 5 picks: Captain Marvel number 1, of course, Deadpool number 2, Ant-Man number 3, Spider-Man number 4, and then Thor number 5. Deadpool is probably the more interesting character here because he actually does have penetration as a buff on his 5th skill. But the nice thing about Deadpool, and the really threatening thing, is that with the Destruction, that 4th skill, you don't even have to do 5. The 4th skill will often one-hit KO, OHKO, certain enemies. So that's what makes it such a good piece for Deadpool. The other thing that's amazing for Deadpool with the CTP of Destruction is that he can go, and I repeat, he can go, I have proved it, he can go to stage 99 with the Lady Deadpool uniform. The Lady Deadpool, holiday uniform. He can go to stage 99 with this CTP. So he becomes probably arguably one of the best, if not the best, hybrid character for being able to one-shot, characters like Jean Grey in PvP, and also being able to clear in 5 minutes stage 99 of at least 2 world bosses. Cull Obsidian, I'd put Corvus on there too, so 3 world bosses, and Proxima. Absolutely nutty. Coming up next, the one that you're probably watching the video for in the first place, if I can scroll to it, CTP of Rage. Now, the CTP of Rage, this is going to cause a little bit of controversy here, but here are my top 5 picks for the CTP of Rage. Listen, every character gets a bonus from CTP of Rage for PvE content. However, the CTP of Rage has basically 0 or next to 0 value for PvP. So consider that. Basically, the only thing on this thing that even remotely helps you for PvP is the dodge. Everything else is useless for PvP. So, with that being said, especially for things like Giant Boss Raid and very, very high ABX scores, the top 5 picks for the CTP of Rage are Luna Snow number 1, Namor number 2, Doctor Strange number 3, Jean Grey number 4, and Captain America number 5. Now, Luna Snow, Namor, and Doctor Strange deal obscene amounts of damage. However, Luna Snow and Namor are the only characters on this list that deal obscene damage with no all defense down. They are probably the 2 hardest hitting characters in the game with just base raw damage. Also put Sharon Rogers on that list, but we've already covered her with energy, and you know, she's good with rage, but she's as good if not better with energy, so what's the point? As far as Doctor Strange goes, he does need the all defense down, so that's why he drops a few points. Jean Grey is interesting on this list because she may not be the hardest hitting character. She might not even be as hard hitting as Captain America because he has built-in ignore or built-in all defense down, but the beautiful thing about Jean Grey with his CTP of Rage is she can still win you 90+% of your PvP fights. So that's why she's so good with Rage, because she can do it all, baby. She's basically like the reverse of Deadpool. Deadpool can do PvE with a mostly PvP obelisk. Jean Grey can do PvP with a completely PvE obelisk. So it's absolutely disgusting. She 100% deserves to be mentioned. Next up, we've got the CTP of Greed, one of the most confusing CTPs in the game, but it is definitely a primarily focused towards PvP type of CTP. It's got a little bit of PvE, but it's mostly PvP. The number one, and the far and away number one, we're talking like number one, huge gap. Number 2 is Jean Grey, huge gap. Then we got Quicksilver, Apocalypse, Deadpool, Silver Surfer. There's really not much to explain here. Essentially, the guard break community is absolutely vital for PvP. The ignore dodge is to kill other speed types, so you counter other Quicksilvers with your Quicksilver or with your Apocalypse or with your Deadpool. And then the heal is a little bit of sustain, but then the damage there, that damage is that punching power of a damage proc, but with the typing. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit confusing. I honestly don't know 100% how it works, but those are my choices. I can't really explain them, go into too much detail. There has been testing done. You kind of just have to trust me on this one if you want. Up next, we've got the CTP of Judgment. That's kind of how it works in mobile games sometimes. I'm sorry, guys. The CTP of Judgment is primarily just for PvE action. It's not going to blow your socks off. You know, it's going to do some world boss, it's going to do some Shadowland, but we are now heading, down into the sort of second tier of CTPs. These are not the kings of the CTP clan, I guess. Yeah. Anyways, number 1 for the CTP of Judgment, Luna Snow. Number 2, Blue Dragon. Number 3, Iceman. Number 4, Shadow Shell. Number 5, Apocalypse. Now, the first 4 characters on that list are actually very hard to play with a regular damage proc, which includes a CTP of Destruction and a CTP of Energy. So that is why they're on this list. They all deal elemental damage, which is a given, but on top of all dealing elemental damage, they're just really hard to play. You need to sort of spam their skills in a way, and so having a proc that's active for the full 5 seconds, which is that line at the bottom, increases damage by all elements by 200% for 5 seconds, that helps you play them with much more accuracy and with much less difficulty. So that's why they are on this list. Is Luna Snow, better with a Judgment than a Rage? No, of course not, because Rage is just always better than Judgment. But Luna Snow is one of the best characters in the game. She's one of the best elemental characters. She's probably the best elemental character in the game. And she is really hard to play with all those refreshing cooldowns on 1, 2, and 3 with a regular damage proc. So that is why Judgment is so good for her. Same thing goes for Blue Dragon. Same thing goes for Iceman. And then Shadow Shell. Apocalypse, he can do really, really well with an obelisk, but it's very hard to roll like double mind damage proc, and that's why he's there on this list as well, because he's just so strong for PvE with that kind of elemental damage boost. Now, next to last, we have the CTP of Authority. This one's actually not as bad as people think, and this is for characters who don't have as much HP to use something like a regen. It's also good as a very nice counter CTP if you're fighting someone that doesn't have penetration. So if you're fighting a Captain Marvel without a CTP of Destruction, if you're fighting a Silver Surfer without a CTP of Destruction, so on and so forth, this is a very, very strong counter pick CTP, so consider that. So the top 5 picks for this one, no surprise here, heavy hitters for PvP. Thanos number 1, Apocalypse number 2, Jean Grey number 3, Silver Surfer number 4, and Doctor Doom number 5. Very interesting, he does slide into this list. Doctor Doom, very, very strong. He's basically going to punch up to Thanos once he gets his tier 3 and a uniform, because he is right now the second best universal villain. Yeah, universal villain. So there. Last but not least, we have the CTP of Insight, the support CTP. No one wants to play support in any games. You want to be the tank, you want to be the DPS, you want to be the magician or the ADC or the APC. Nobody wants to play support. Nobody wants to be the healer, but somebody has to be the healer. So let's get into it. Number 1, Colossus. Number 2, Valkyrie. Number 3, She-Hulk. Number 4, Phil Coulson. Number 5, White Fox. Now, Colossus is there primarily for PvP, but you can slot him on any PvE team to provide you with a huge defensive bonus, and especially if you don't have mind control and you're going to get hit, you can reduce the damage you take by 50%. That's pretty damn good, and he works on all 10 world bosses. That's pretty damn good, and he's never banned in PvP. That's pretty damn good, Cynicalex. You bet. It actually is pretty damn good. And the synergy here is that Colossus reflects damage, and this provides him with max HP, which means that he can reflect more damage. Not necessarily the best CTP for him, but he makes use of it the best in the overall scheme of the game as a support type character, which has basically cemented his role with his latest Phoenix 5 uniform. Valkyrie, Phil Coulson, and White Fox are basically Colossus, except primarily they are boosting your damage, so this is going to help them boost your damage even more. Phil Coulson is above White Fox because Phil Coulson sucks. So you don't want to give Phil Coulson a real obelisk. This is just a support obelisk. White Fox can actually function with a damage proc or a CTP of destruction or something like that, so that's why she's a little bit lower. And then She-Hulk is there as a leadership, but also because both She-Hulk and Valkyrie can double dip for multiple days of ABX, on top of the fact that they can both buff for World Boss. I know there are other ABX considerations for Insight, like, Ulysses Claw or other characters, but I just felt like a lot of those other characters don't translate their support buffs as well to things like World Boss. That's why I put Valkyrie and She-Hulk on this list instead. I wasn't trying to ignore ABX, but I just needed to consider other game modes as well. But if you're specifically talking about ABX, Valkyrie and She-Hulk would be redundant, technically speaking. So I just want to make that clear. For ABX specifically, you would probably just pick Valkyrie or just pick She-Hulk, and then put another Insight on a different character, let's say Ulysses Claw for Blast, or another character that I can't think of, like Black Cat or something like that, or Medusa for multiple days of ABX. So with that being said, that was my list for the top 5 characters for all of the existing CTPs in Marvel Future Fight. Screw the CTP of Veteran. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.